My wife's first love made a comeback to the country, and that's when I decided to ask for a divorce. She shot back, "You think you can live without me?" But ultimately, it was her who couldn't handle it, and the one begging for her was still her. Lena and I had been hitched for 12 years. I took care of every little thing for her during that time. After her grandfather died, all the vast wealth and duties of the Wu family landed on her. Lena's granddad was the guy who saved my life, someone I held in high regard. Before he passed, he asked me to marry Lena, and I said yes. Lena was spoiled and couldn't handle much on her own. "Please, for all the years I've been kind to you, help me, help her too," I pleaded. It was the first time the old man ever used his influence to push me, and I had no choice but to agree. Right after our wedding, Lena's granddad died. Once he was gone, chaos erupted within the Wu family business. Lena's uncles saw an opportunity since she was just a woman and started grabbing the family's assets. I had to be strategic to protect Lena and the Wu legacy. People started mocking me, calling me the Wu family's loyal lapdog. There were countless attempts on my life, but I didn't care. Wu's granddad saved me, and repaying him was my duty. I wanted a peaceful life with Lena, but she was convinced I was after her family's fortune. I tried several times to gently persuade her to join me in running the company, but she just laughed it off. "Isn't your dad's main reason for leaving you in charge of the company? Just keep an eye on things and stop meddling in my business." Once, after I pulled her away from some guys at a club, she got mad. "Are you done yet, Mike? Do you really think just because we're married, you're my man? Dream on. You're just the steward my dad left me. Know your place and stop causing drama." From that day, I knew Lena never planned to have a proper life with me, nor would she ever change. I ended up in a car crash because of revenge from the Wu family's rivals. I called Lena, asking her to stay at the company for just 2 days. "Mike, are you acting like a girl? Clinging on like this? Is this fun for you?" She hung up, blocked my number, and never came to see me in the hospital. I had no choice but to keep working through the pain. She left all of Wu family's business on my shoulders without a second thought. Confident in her dad's life-saving favor towards me, she acted without fear. Over the years, I slowly took back the businesses that were lost after the old man died. I gradually restored the Wu family to its former glory. I thought our lives would just be civil from then on, not bothering each other. But out of nowhere, she came back home, acting like the perfect wife and loving mom. A few days at the villa, Lena's phone wouldn't stop blowing up with calls from her friends. At dinner, I took a glance at her. "Ain't you going out?" she asked, turning off her phone. "What? You don't want me to stay home?" I ignored her and started working. "This is your home. You can chill wherever you want." She looked annoyed. "Mike, don't you notice something different about me today?" I raised an eyebrow, confused. She bit her lip. "I got a new haircut and even changed into a new nightgown, and you didn't even notice." Only then did I see she was wearing a deep V-lace dress. Her legs were long and straight. "I see. It looks nice." She leaned in closer, her perfume filling my nose. She fluttered her eyes and smiled seductively. "So, who's looking better? Me or Laura?" Laura. I suddenly got why she'd been staying home more lately. The Wu family's deals with the Lin family were handled by Laura. After their partnership ended, she asked if I wanted to join Lin Corp. Lena didn't appreciate what she had. "If you join me, I won't let your talent go to waste." Laura was not only young and gorgeous, but also smart. To me, she'd been the perfect partner. But I had already promised Lena's granddad. I couldn't break my word, so I turned Laura down. Lena nudged me. "Answer me. Who looks better, me or Laura?" Not wanting her to hold me up, I replied absent-mindedly, "You look better." Lena was instantly happy. She dressed up nicely and went out. I thought she'd go back to her old habit of being gone for days. But that night, she came back and bought me a bunch of clothes and shoes. I won't lie, I was surprised. Even though our marriage was arranged by her granddad, I had long given up any hope of her loving me. But after all, we were married. Being friends or business partners who could live peacefully wasn't too bad. At least things were calm on the surface. This peaceful life lasted for 8 years. Lena truly played the role of a good wife and mother for those years. Just when I thought this could last forever, Ethan showed up. He was Lena's unforgettable first love, the guy who was her entire youth. No one after him could ever top him. I'd seen the men Lena hung out with in clubs, and they all had one thing in common. They looked like Ethan. The day Ethan came back to the country, I was with Lena for a checkup at the hospital. We had been trying for 3 years before we finally had a kid. I was thrilled, working from home every day, worried the housekeeper might not take good care of her. I even hired someone to learn how to cook dishes that pregnant women love. After Lena got pregnant, her figure changed, which often made her cry and throw tantrums. I felt bad for her and did everything I could to cheer her up. After each outburst, she'd look at me with red eyes and say, "Honey, I'm sorry. Please don't be mad." Looking at her delicate, childlike face, my heart softened a bit, thinking my life was about to get perfect. But Ethan took everything from me effortlessly. After the checkup, Lena seemed distracted. Her hand holding her phone turned pale, and she forced a smile at me. "Honey, you should go home first. I have a class reunion this afternoon and might be back late." I felt uneasy. "I'll drive you there." "No need, honey. Let the driver take me. I want your coconut chicken soup when I get home. Can you make it for me?" She pouted playfully, and I couldn't help but smile. All right, it took 5 hours to make the coconut chicken soup, and she'd be home in time to enjoy it. The doctor said her pregnancy was stable as long as she didn't drink alcohol. That night, when Lena came home, her eyes were red. I brought her the coconut chicken soup. "Try it." "I don't want it anymore," she said softly. I tried to coax her. "Just one sip." "Okay, I've been working on it all afternoon." Suddenly, she got angry and threw the bowl. "I said I don't want it." She cried and ran upstairs, leaving me stunned. The soup had scalded the back of my hand, turning it red. That night, I saw photos from the class reunion posted by Lena's friend on social media. Next to Lena was Ethan, who had been abroad for years. Ethan and Lena were childhood sweethearts. They matched in every way, and with so many years together, they should have been engaged. In the photo, Ethan was wearing a white shirt with gold-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, his gaze fixed on Lena, restrained yet full of longing. He had that youthful charm Lena always liked, something I no longer had. After years of ruthless business battles, my heart had grown cold and hard, lacking youthful innocence. Ethan's parents always wanted him to be engaged to Lena. Since Lena was the only daughter of the Wu family and not particularly capable, marrying her meant the entire Wu family would become part of the Lu family. Lena's granddad saw through this and refused their marriage, insisting Lena marry me before he died. Now, with Lena's granddad gone and Ethan back in the country, nothing stood in their way. I went to open the bedroom door to go to sleep, but it was locked. Lena had locked the door from the inside. I went to the guest room, already prepared for Lena to change her mind. I neither fought nor argued. I only hoped Lena would have the baby who would inherit the Wu family's estate, giving her some security. This way, the Lu family wouldn't completely swallow up the Wu family and take everything from her. The child was the only lifeline I had left for her, the last tie between us. Once the baby was born, I wouldn't owe the Wu family anything anymore. The next morning, while I was in a meeting at the company, an unexpected visitor showed up at the front desk asking for me. When I went downstairs, I saw Ethan. He smiled and greeted me. "Hey, Mike, I'm Ethan. Didn't think our first meeting would be so chill." I gave him a careful look. Ethan looked even more distinguished in person than in the photos. His every move exuded natural elegance, something I couldn't achieve no matter how hard I worked my way up. He invited me to a nearby private room. Once we were seated, he poured me a cup of tea. "You know about me and Lena. If it weren't for the old man bringing you into the mix, she and I would have been married long ago." I nodded. "Indeed, I'm back now, and Lena still has feelings for me. I know you don't care for her. Just let her go." Saying that, he pulled out a check for $10 million and placed it in front of me. This is your compensation." Hearing his words, I couldn't help but laugh. Do you know what Woo Group's monthly revenue is now? Ethan's eyes narrowed and his smile didn't reach his eyes. But in the end, that's Woo family business, isn't it? It has nothing to do with you. You wouldn't be thinking of taking it all for yourself, would you? He grinned. I nodded. The old man personally handed it to me. There's nothing I can do. I have to take it, even if I don't want to, I said with a touch of annoyance. Ethan's face darkened and he sneered. Mike, clinging to Lena like this is pointless. She's in love with me. He flashed a confident smile. He and Lena were childhood sweethearts. Naturally, he was confident. They studied together, went to concerts, traveled abroad together. Meanwhile, I was just a poor student sponsored by the Wu family at the time. While they enjoyed life's pleasures, I was working part-time washing dishes in the cafeteria, trying to stretch a single dollar to two. Lena wasn't wrong. Someone like me didn't even deserve to talk to people like them. They were born with everything. And I was the outsider who took their place. My presence had always been an eyesore. But none of this was what I wanted. They couldn't have it both ways. When they needed me, they had me marry Lena. When they didn't, they wanted to kick me aside. Why should I accept that? I stared straight into Ethan's eyes, not blinking. So, you know what this behavior of yours is called, right? You're the male version of a homewrecker. If you can't make her happy, yet insist on keeping her by your side, you're truly disgusting. Ethan clenched his fists, furious, and tried to hit me, but I easily subdued him. An enraged fool, you really are pathetic. I let him go and turned to leave. I drove home, and as soon as I opened the door, Lena threw a cup at me, hitting me in the head. Blood streamed down my forehead as her furious gaze froze in place. She rushed over in a panic. Why didn't you dodge? I brushed her hand away, suddenly feeling exhausted. And you, Lena, why did you throw the cup at me? Why do you keep hurting me for no reason? I looked at her face and memorized it. Lena, haven't I treated you well all these years? Or have I done something wrong? Can you tell me why you're doing this to me? Is it just because I owe your dad my life? Do I deserve this because of that? Tears streamed down her face as she grabbed my hand anxiously. No, honey. No, it's Ethan. Ethan told me you met him today and even hit him. I laughed bitterly. So you're standing up for him, taking revenge on his behalf. Is that it? I took a step back, raising my hands to prevent her from touching me. My voice was hoarse as I turned to leave. Lena, let's get a divorce. I'll have my secretary send you the papers. We're done. Lena panicked and rushed to hug me from behind. You're just mad. Right, honey? Once you calm down, everything will be fine. Won't it? Tell me. I pried her arms off me, completely drained. I'm tired, Lena. Let's end this. Seeing the determination in my eyes, she finally realized I was serious. She cried and hit me. Don't regret this, Mike. I won't. I left as soon as I said it. She slammed the door behind me. Her devastated sobs echoed through the villa's doors, but I walked away without hesitation. I had never slept so well. When I woke up, it was already late afternoon. My phone was flooded with missed calls from Lena. I drove to the office and opened the door, only to find Lena standing there. She threw the divorce contract at my feet, glaring fiercely. Didn't you want a divorce? Fine, let's get divorced. Go ahead and sign. Lena's delicate face showed signs of exhaustion. The dark circles under her eyes were barely hidden by heavy makeup. It looked like she hadn't slept all night. I picked up the contract and read it in a few minutes. The divorce terms were harsh. I had to give up control and shares of Wu Group, and she wanted most of my personal assets. As for properties, not a single one was left for me. Lena had a smug look on her face, certain I wouldn't dare sign. My hands trembled with anger. How was this any different from being left with nothing? Her tone softened involuntarily. What do you say, Mike? If you don't sign, we can still… Before she could finish, I had already written my name without hesitation. You're crazy, Mike. Lena stared at me in disbelief, the confidence in her eyes gone. I don't want a single cent of Wu family's money. My personal account has just a little over 80 grand. If you need it, I can transfer half to you. I spoke calmly, my eyes filled with nothing but exhaustion. All these years, I had poured my heart and soul into the company and into Lena. Aside from necessary expenses, I hadn't bought anything extra. Since Lena wanted me to walk away with nothing, I would grant her wish. This way, I would also repay the old man's favor completely. Seeing my resolute attitude, Lena's reluctance gradually turned into anger. Fine. If you want to be noble, I'll grant you that. I'd love to see how long you can last with your 80 grand once you leave Wu Group. With that, she slammed the door in a fit of rage, just like yesterday. Looking out the window at the towering buildings, I glanced at a photo of me at 18 when I was sponsored by the Wu family. Finally, I was free. Not long after leaving Wu Group, my phone started blowing up. When I saw the screenshots of Lena's social media posts, I couldn't help but laugh. This was so Lena. In her post, she announced that she had divorced me and warned that anyone who helped me would be going against her. Still as childish as ever. I turned off my phone and walked into a quiet bar on the side of the road. The burning liquid slid down my throat. The colorful lights flickered over my body, making me uncomfortable. Lena never liked me drinking. After we got married, even when I had to drink for business, I'd wash myself multiple times before daring to enter the house. But today, I could drink to my heart's content because I no longer had to care about her. I didn't have to care about anyone. I was finally free. From now on, I could live the way I wanted, and no one could manipulate me morally anymore. Mr. Liu, what brings you here for a drink today? Aren't you in a hurry to go home and accompany your wife? I looked up to see a pair of playful eyes staring at me. Laura was watching me with amusement. The overhead lights cast a warm glow on her. After half a year without seeing her, she looked even more graceful and gentle. I'm divorced, I said calmly. What? You're divorced? Laura asked with feigned surprise. Seeing her act so shocked, I couldn't help but laugh. Your acting is terrible. She smiled helplessly. I was just worried you might take it too hard. Everyone knows you're famous in our circle for pampering your wife. Yeah, everyone knew, except for Lena. She took it for granted, pushing me further and further. When the old man passed away, almost everyone thought Wu Group falling into my hands was like a lamb entering a lion's den, and that it wouldn't be long before I divorced Lena and took over the Wu family's assets. But I didn't. Step by step, I carried Wu Group on my shoulders, doing everything I could to protect Lena. Even Laura once said that if I were her husband, the Lin family would have dominated the capital by now. But why couldn't Lena understand? Let it go. Losing you is Lena's loss. Laura comforted me and filled her glass with wine. I pointed a finger at her. This bottle costs 10 grand. You poured about a tenth. Transfer the money or cash it. Hearing my words, Laura couldn't help but burst into laughter. Are you bankrupt? I smiled at her through my drunken haze. I walked away with nothing. I downed the rest of my drink in one gulp and passed out in her arms the next moment. When I woke up, my head was splitting. Out of habit, I grabbed my phone, ready to head to work. Wait, wasn't I drinking with Laura last night? How did I end up in bed? My eyes shot open. The room's decor was warm and inviting, with a hint of peach-scented perfume in the air. Hearing that I was awake, Laura entered the room with breakfast. You're awake. I quickly put on my clothes, apologized to Laura, and tried to leave. What's this? Mike, you slept in my bed and now you want to just walk away? Laura suddenly blocked my way, her tone assertive. Since you have nowhere else to go, why don't you help me manage my family's subsidiary? How about it? She smiled, wearing the same confident look she always had during negotiations when she knew she had the upper hand. I thought it over calmly. At this point, I had nowhere else to go. Lena and our mutual friends had made it clear where they stood. Laura was definitely the best choice. I want 30% of the company's shares. Laura smiled happily. Deal. She tapped the table beside her, her eyes curving into a smile. Now let's eat. Laura generously provided me with all the resources she had. Taking over the new company went much more smoothly than when I first started handling Woo Group's business. It wasn't even close. She practically handed the subsidiary over to me entirely, and I didn't disappoint her. In just 3 months, the company's revenue increased nearly tenfold. I became incredibly busy, dealing with countless issues at the office every day. As I was reviewing the latest financial reports, I heard a commotion at the door. Lena barged in angrily, pushing the door open with force. The secretary following behind kept apologizing, explaining that she couldn't stop her. Mike, how could you get involved with Laura, and you're helping the Lin family attack our Wu family's business? Do you have any idea how much our revenue dropped this month? Her voice was sharp, and she swept everything off my desk onto the floor. Hearing her unreasonable outburst, I almost laughed. First of all, we're divorced. Whoever I'm with now is none of your business. Second, the capital market is cutthroat. No one's giving you a free pass. I don't see anything wrong with what I'm doing. Lena pointed at me, furious. Mike, your granddad saved your life, and the Wu family raised you all these years. Now you're turning around and competing against us for business. Just like before, she used the Wu family patriarch to pressure me. She thought I'd react like I had countless times before. Helpless, frustrated, resigned, and ultimately forced to give in. I looked up and met her gaze. Lena, I no longer owe your granddad anything. I've worked myself to the bone for the Wu family for 12 years, repaying that debt. What more do I owe your family? My voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. Get out, Lena. She froze, unable to believe I would say something like that to her. Her arrogance disappeared instantly, and her voice softened as she choked back tears. What about the child? Even if you don't care about Wu Group or me, do you not care about our child? I stayed silent, lips pursed. She raised her voice, overcome with emotion. You don't care about the baby either. She sobbed uncontrollably, all her previous arrogance gone. I unclenched my fists, my tone softening slightly. Take good care of yourself during the pregnancy. Once the baby is born, I'll fulfill my responsibilities as a father. Seeing me slightly relent, Lena seemed to latch onto a lifeline. Mike, you wanted this child. You can't just walk away. You must remarry me, or I'll get rid of this child. Her expression twisted. Her eyes once again filled with that familiar manipulative confidence. I couldn't help but feel disgusted. Disappointed, I replied. If you don't want the baby, I'll respect your decision. The child was not only the last connection between Lena and me, but also the last bit of security I had left for her future. If she didn't want that security, then I would let her go. I was no longer the man who would let the Wu family and Lena humiliate me at will. I left first, allowing Lena to destroy my office in a fit of rage. Cheers, Mr. Liu. Laura raised her wine glass, clinking it against mine. Holding the financial report, she looked at me with a beaming smile, clearly satisfied with my performance. During the time I'd been helping her manage the company, several projects on the verge of collapse had been revived under my leadership, earning the Lin family tens of millions in profit. Those shareholders at the main company who used to mock her had fallen silent. Every day after work, Laura would come and take me out to dinner. After a while, I got used to having her around. Miss Lin, once this project is complete, I plan to cash out all my shares, I said gently, putting down my chopsticks. Laura's smile immediately faded, replaced by anxiety. Is someone at the company giving you trouble? Tell me who it is. And It's not that. I shook my head. You and the Lin family have treated me very well. I'm not leaving because of work-related issues. It's just that I want to build something of my own. My years at the Wu family taught me one thing. If I truly wanted to be independent in Beijing, I needed to have something entirely mine. Otherwise, I'd never be fully free. Laura studied my expression, her gaze thoughtful, and eventually nodded in understanding. If you're ever interested, there will always be a high-paying position for you at the Lin family. I smiled at her, appreciating her offer. Just then, my phone rang. When I looked at the screen, it was Lena calling. With a sigh, I reluctantly answered. Mike, I'm at the hospital right now. Who is it? Laura asked. Lena's voice suddenly turned sharp. Mike, I'm giving you half an hour to get here. If you don't show up, you'll never see your child again. She hung up abruptly. With no other choice, I grabbed my coat and drove to meet her. Because of traffic, I arrived half an hour late at the address Lena had given me. I didn't want to have any more ties to her, but she was carrying my child. I had no choice. As soon as I reached the entrance to the department, I heard Ethan's concerned voice. Lena, don't worry. Even if Mike doesn't come, I'll still be here with you. Lena, pale-faced, responded with a soft, I walked in, and the moment Lena saw me, her eyes turned red with self-pity. So you actually showed up. I thought I'd never see you again, but it doesn't matter. You won't have to see me anymore. Ethan pulled the blanket over her, his face full of concern. Lena, you just had an abortion. Don't get upset. He then turned to me, his eyes filled with accusation. Mike, no matter what, that was your child. How could you abandon her at a time like this and be with another woman? Lena bit her lip, her voice trembling. Get him out of here. If he doesn't care, there's nothing left to say. Even though I had prepared myself, my mind still went blank for a moment. I can't believe it. Are you insane? Do you really think aborting the baby is good for you, Lena? You fool. I thought that even if not for me or the Wu family, Lena would at least keep the baby. After all, it was her own flesh and blood, but reality had slapped me in the face. What mattered most to Lena was never me, and not even the Wu family. It was always Ethan. After leaving the hospital, I cut off all contact with Lena and sold the shares Laura had given me, cashing out a large sum of money. I wanted nothing more than to leave this place and sever all ties with the Wu family. After many years of working in Beijing, I had built up connections and networks far beyond what most entrepreneurs could dream of. As a result, my new company's business progressed exceptionally well, and within a few years, it became a leader in the industry. Though not as massive as the Lin or Wu families, it was more than enough to secure my position. At the same time, my business with the Lin family continued to mutually benefit us, and my relationship with Laura gradually deepened. We began dining together, listening to classical music, and traveling together. I was slowly forgetting the pain Lena had caused me, focusing on living my life for myself. I heard that your ex-wife and Ethan would be attending the Lin family's banquet tonight. Laura straightened my collar, her eyes carefully observing my expression. After Lena and I divorced, the Wu family's business went through a period of decline. It wasn't until Lena married Ethan and the Liu family took over the Wu family's affairs that things started to improve. I looked at Laura, who was thoughtfully fixing my clothes, and gently kissed her on the forehead. She and I are long over, I replied. Laura didn't seem entirely pleased. Instead, she said, Lena and Ethan have been fighting constantly since they got married, and Ethan's mom isn't treating Lena well. She continued, watching my reaction closely. Word is that when Lena was pregnant, the baby was too far along. She insisted on having an abortion, which left her unable to conceive again. I interrupted her. All right, let's not talk about irrelevant people anymore. Seeing my attitude, Laura smiled gently and took my hand as we walked into the banquet hall. Although my company isn't large yet, it's already a leader in the industry, and my relationship with the Lin family is exceptional. Because of this, many people at the banquet were eager to connect with me. After some conversations, I managed to find a few promising business partners. Ethan, why would you bring Lena to the Liu family banquet? What help can a woman who's never managed a company provide? I turned my head and saw Ethan walking in with his mother. Lena followed behind them, looking dazed. Her once delicate, charming face now looked deathly pale. Mom, Lena is my wife. It's only right for me to bring her, Ethan replied seriously. Mrs. Liu scoffed at her son's words, turning away to chat with other wealthy daughters. I shook my head, not intending to have any contact with Lena or the Wu family. I was about to go find Laura, but before I could take 2 steps, I saw Mrs. Liu enthusiastically pulling Laura aside for a chat. Laura, you and Ethan are both leaders among the younger generation in Beijing. Our families should collaborate more in the future. Mrs. Liu looked at Laura with a gentle smile, completely different from how she had just treated Lena. Laura, however, didn't look pleased. She subtly moved Mrs. Liu's hand away. When I was in my 20s, I was already running my family's company day and night. I doubt Ethan, who took his sweet time studying abroad, would have much to say to me. Mrs. Liu's expression stiffened, but she forced a smile. It doesn't matter. Ethan is now a board member of several companies. I'm sure you'll have more in common. Seeing that Mrs. Liu still didn't know when to back off, Laura's face turned cold. Since Ethan has married the Wu family's daughter, maybe you should spend more time caring for your daughter-in-law rather than talking to me. With that, she walked over to me, took my hand, and led me away. I couldn't help but sigh. Ethan is at least polite. How does Mrs. Liu manage to be so irritating? Laura's expression remained calm, probably because Lena can't have children. She's been wanting her son to divorce and remarry for a while now. Someone like Mrs. Liu, who has benefited from taking advantage of others, wouldn't easily hand over her family's legacy in the future. Driving Lena to divorce is just a matter of time. I sighed again at Laura's words. Laura looked disgusted. They use their son to latch onto someone when it's convenient. And once they're done, they kick them out. The Liu family is truly repulsive. The banquet went by quickly. The guests gradually left, and I glanced at the clock on the wall, ready to leave with Laura. By chance, we ran into Lena arguing with Ethan at the entrance. Ethan, am I still your wife? Your mother publicly humiliated me at the banquet and was openly scouting for another wife for you. And you did nothing. Does your Liu family even see me as a person? Lena's face was drained of all color, and her lips were pale. Her eyes were filled with disappointment. Ethan's expression hardened as he grabbed her wrist. Let's talk about this at home. Lena pulled her hand away forcefully. Since I married you, how many benefits has your Liu family gained from Wu Group? How much has your status improved? I've endured countless humiliations from your mother. Now that you've drained everything from the Wu family, I'm no longer needed. Right, Ethan replied, his temper flaring. Without the Liu family stepping in, how long do you think Wu Group could have survived? As for my mother, she was wrong, and I'll make her apologize to you when we get home. Now, can you stop throwing tantrums and come home with me? Lena's eyes reddened, and she let out a bitter laugh, stepping back. Tantrums. Tantrums. You barely come home because of your work, and it's my fault for throwing tantrums. Your mother mocks me for not being able to have children, and that's also my fault. Her eyes filled with pain, and her voice trembled as she continued. And now your Liu family publicly humiliates me, treating me as disposable. Is that also because of my tantrums? Ethan's face darkened as he took a deep breath. We'll discuss this at home, Lena, he said, but something seemed to snap in Lena. She pointed at Ethan and shouted, You're not even half as good to me as Mike was. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have lost my child. Your Liu family has been after the Wu family's assets from the start, trying to wipe us out. Hearing this, Ethan dropped all pretense and stormed out of the banquet, leaving Lena alone, collapsing in tears. I watched the scene unfold, feeling as though everything was happening as expected, but I wasn't happy about it. A few months later, Lena and Ethan divorced. Before the divorce, she visited the company a few times. She rallied the old members of the Wu family and took back control of Wu Group. When Mrs. Liu found out, she had a massive argument with Lena. But this time, Lena didn't cry or make a scene. She simply left the Liu family the next day. Without the Wu family's support, many of Ethan's business ventures crumbled. His decline was visible to everyone, but Lena didn't fare much better. Wu Group's scale shrank significantly and never regained its former glory. Meanwhile, my relationship with Laura progressed quickly, and we got engaged a month ago. Reflecting on everything that happened in the past 6 months, I sighed, placed the white chrysanthemum in front of the Wu patriarch's grave, bowed, and turned to leave. As I did, I saw Lena. She looked gaunt and pale, so much so that I barely recognized her. She saw me and hesitated before finally speaking. "You're here to see Grandpa too." I nodded, not intending to say much. Lena grabbed my hand, trembling slightly. Her eyes were filled with pain and humility as she spoke. "Mike, I know I was wrong. I didn't cherish the good you gave me. It's all my fault. Can you give me another chance? Let's start over." Lena's empty eyes showed a glimmer of hope, her fingers gripping tightly. I looked at her calmly, without any emotion. "Lena, we're over." Hearing my answer, it was as if all the strength drained out of her. She knelt in front of the Wu patriarch's grave, sobbing softly. I pulled my arm away and turned to leave, not sparing her another glance. Dark clouds hung in the sky, and a cool breeze blew past. Yet I felt lighter than ever. The road ahead was long and full of obstacles. But finally, 12 years after leaving the Wu family's support, I had truly been reborn.